There are a lot of really good weapons in Chivalry 2, and what I love about the dev team is they do a really great job making sure that the extreme majority of weapons that are in the game are viable, and that since each player is going to value different attributes like reach, swing manipulation, and speed differently, there's no like surefire, this is the meta weapon you have to use, like something like Call of Duty where there's just an endless cycle of massive nerfs and buffs. Weapons, they kind of have their roles, and you choose based on situation, playstyle, and what class you want to roll. Now, there are definitely weapons that are more popular than others, like the Messer or the Danax, and well, we're not going to talk about those today at all. What happens in a game like Chivalry is there are so many viable weapons. Some, they don't get quite the love and usage that they deserve. So today, it's all about the top 5 most underrated weapons in Chivalry 2. If you enjoy the video, make sure to subscribe. Now, ignore the numbering on the list here. It's not meant to be a this is better than that list, just these weapons are all underrated, try them out type of list. So we're going to start with a blunt weapon, the two-handed hammer, and this weapon, it slaps. It kind of has that sweet spot where you can excel it with those alt slashes and it goes real fast, but you can also slow it down and you can do some nice drags with it as well. And not to mention its blunt damage, which means it absolutely blows up knights. And knights are the most played class in the game, so that's always a nice bonus to have. Now the hammer, it doesn't get as much love in this game as it probably should because everyone's darling is the heavy mace. And now for a long time, the heavy mace was just a slightly better two-handed hammer. And I say slightly because it's not that much better. But with some of the recent nerfs, that difference now, it's even more negligible. And if you're a fan of the mace, I think you'll also like using the two-handed hammer for a switch up. Now, next up, we have a severely underrated weapon, and that is the heavy Cavalry Sword. And this is an interesting weapon because its biggest strength is something I seem to value more than a lot of players, and that is weapon reach. The Cavalry Sword, it's a long one-handed weapon, and it's a bit slower than most of the one-handers, which makes it nice for swing manipulation. But the name of the game really here is distance control. Paired up with a heavy or medium shield, this weapon, it's really nice for kind of getting into the breach and controlling the area and distance of a fight without having to go all in, like say you're using a warhammer and you need a face hug. I think the reason the Cav Sword is not used that much is it doesn't hit very hard, so it can feel a bit weak against full health knights. However, it does have one of the best special abilities in the game. The special, it's just real confusing. It looks very much like an overhead. It slaps. Ultimately, this is more of a team fight or group fight weapon. If you have the discipline not to run in yourself 1v10 like an idiot, it works really well if you can stick with your squad and use it to kind of control range, control distance, and support teammates. It's really fun. Third on the list, we have a weapon I recently made a video on, and that is the Battle Axe. The Battle Axe, it's criminally underrated. All the axes in the game are really, really good, and this one's kind of top notch in both TO and dueling. I like to call it the maul that cleaves. This thing, it absolutely slaps, and not just in the health bar, but it does such good damage that it just destroys the stamina bar as well. You miss a counter or two and you're empty-handed. Now the weapon, it does lack reach, which is why I think people don't use them as much as say an Executioner Axe or the War Axe, which is very similar but slightly longer. The lack of reach makes it a little bit harder to drag it through multiple enemies in a fight and just kind of stay at a safe distance. However, despite its limitations, I think people, especially on the Vanguard class, will enjoy running it in full Berserk mode, just running in, heavy swinging, and you kill almost everything in the game in 2 shots. It absolutely slaps. Now, second on the list, we have the new weapon, the Goodendag, or Good Day. I hope I said it right this time. The weapon, it's ugly, and I rarely see them in a lobby anymore, which I think is because it looks so lame. However, don't sleep on this thing. The Goodendag, it's the best weapon on the engineer class, and it's actually really good to run on footman also. Usually when we get a new weapon in Shiv 2, people run it like crazy for the first few months. I haven't quite seen that, I think, again, because it's ugly. But this thing, it has that super satisfying crunch when you hit someone. It makes it so fun and hilarious to use. And it feels somewhere like it's between a maul and a heavy mace. It's a blunt weapon, but it's also versatile and can blow up vanguards with the piercing damage from the stab attack. It's not fast, let's put it that way. It's a slow weapon and doesn't have reach. But the weapon, it has great swing manipulation. Surprisingly, it really catches people off guard how much you can slow it down. I'll catch some people with it who are very, very patiently waiting for the counter and they still go too fast. I think this was a great addition to the game. More people need to try it out, and once you hear that crunch a few times, I think you guys will really enjoy using it. Now at the top spot, we have the Highland Boys. I've also made a video on that, and I've been on a slight Highland Sword kick lately. Let's start off by saying the weapon is slow, and the recovery, if you miss, is very long, so it can be a little bit punishing to play with. However, the Highland Sword also, it hits incredibly hard with heavy overheads, and it has tremendous reach. It's like a monstrous halberd, and while not having the best slashes number-wise, the Highland Sword is a great weapon when surrounded because this weapon, it lets you drag your sword through a ton of enemies, so while one hit might be only for 50 damage, you can also hit 5 people for 50 a pop, which makes those DPS numbers really high, so it's great for crowd control and group fights. However, the real strength of the Highland Sword is those super strong overheads that we mentioned before. These things hit hard and they're slow, which lets you also drag them for a day and a half, and you can actually hit multiple enemies with the overheads because they're so slow, and you can use it almost like a bootleg slash. And now, of course, this weapon looked horrible when it was the Final Fantasy Cloud anime thing, but there's some new skins that make it look like an actual real weapon, and these are just icing on the cake, and it's definitely been my most underrated weapon in Shiv for the past little bit. I recommend you guys try it out. Alright guys, that's going to be it for me. I hope you enjoyed the video. Champ out.